on Earth. Now, you know, we're beyond 7 billion. I've watched our numbers almost quadruple since my first experience breathing air on this planet. It's remarkable. I think kids of today are the luckiest ever to arrive on Earth, because for the first time we are able to see things, know things, explore things using technologies that never existed before. I mean, right here in Houston, the center of access to the skies above, giving us a view of Earth that none of our predecessors, however smart they were, just could not imagine what 10-year-olds of today grew up understanding. The view of Earth from space and the view of Earth from deep in the sea. So, just to give you a glimpse of the journey I personally have experienced, let me take you back to the time when astronauts were first going high in the sky, and I had a chance to go, well, not that deep in the ocean, but to stay underwater for 2 weeks. It wasn't just the experience of being among the first to live underwater in 1970 while astronauts were walking on the moon, but to look at how people regarded women as scientists doing whatever it is that women were supposed to do. So I'm going to start with a little video clip that comes from the film Mission Blue that you can see the whole thing if you want to on Netflix. Here we go. A little video clip before we dive into some other images from the same film, Mission Blue. 10 years after the time living underwater, a time that again saw a remarkable change in the ocean, both in terms of what we began to understand about the ocean and how it affects all of us everywhere, and also how we are affecting the ocean. Meanwhile, footprints on the moon stopped, but I had a chance to use a moon-like walking suit called the Gym, really developed for the oil and gas industry, but borrowed for this occasion, to be able to dive to more than 1,000 feet down, breathing just, air, the same pressure that we have here in this room, in a protective diving suit called Gym, operated by Oceaneering International, based in Houston. So, having a chance to take myself down, to see for myself that life abounds from the surface down to 1,000 feet, and those who were able in 1960 with a Trieste to go to full ocean depth 7 miles down, found life all the way. Not all of it big and toothy like the sharks that you see in relatively shallow water, and some do live in deep water as well, but life, most of life on Earth is small, microscopic, and in the ocean, even in a glass of water, there may be literally millions of living things, microscopic things, but the ocean is a living system. And to have a chance to go down and to be a witness, all of us are now witnesses to perhaps the greatest era of change in all of human history, and maybe the greatest era of opportunity as well, because we not only are seeing these rapid shifts in the way the ocean and the planet as a whole works, but we are empowered with greater knowledge than has ever been possible before. We have a chance to alter our pathway going forward now that there have been astronauts up in the sky looking back and giving us information from their perspective up in space, and satellites that are able to record information, show the changes, gather the evidence, and perhaps show us a way forward. People living high in the sky. Oh, what a concept. As a kid, that would be just science fiction. But it's now science fact. What else can we do as humans to explore and answer those big questions? Who are we? Where do we come from? And maybe most importantly, where are we going? Being up in the sky and in the ocean, I've had the chance on 10 times now, 10 occasions, to live underwater. Everybody should try it. Everybody should see what it's like to spend the night with a fish and really be part of the action. Not just inside, warm and dry, looking out, but to get out in the ocean. I think one of the greatest things that we can do for education can be summed up by saying, no child left dry. Must get out there, must get wet, put on a face mask, explore the ocean. It's our planet, and we are now able, as no people who've ever occupied Earth in any time in all of our history, to see things others could not see, and understand what others could not understand, and to dive in and see the history of life on Earth, the creatures. That if you dive into this museum and look at the history of life on Earth, the exhibits that are here, that show the progression of the development of life over not just thousands, not just millions, but billions of years. And we are relative newcomers. But if you dive into the ocean, you can see elements of this vast history. Nearly all of the major divisions of animals occur in the ocean. Only about half occur on the land. So it's a real trip. As a living paleontologist, a geologist, to be able to go and see the history of life on Earth. So, technologies that now exist. I mean, we don't yet have Hertz rent-a-sub, but it's out there to be done. Maybe somebody in this audience will make it happen. I actually have started 3 companies with the idea, as a scientist, I want to get down where the action is. And since there isn't a place to go conveniently rent, like a car, a sub to go down in the ocean, I worked with engineers to start building some of the equipment. Well, that was back soon after I used the GEM system. Now there are companies around the world. Soon maybe it will be possible for any little kid who wants to go out on a Saturday afternoon to get mom and dad to go, okay, we'll get a sub today, and go out and explore the ocean. What's stopping us anyway? Our imagination, our will, whatever. It's there to be done. We go into parks on the land, we can climb mountains, but there are more mountains under the sea, and most of them have never been climbed at all. They are for us to do. It is possible to go out to Cocos Island off the coast of Costa Rica and hop into a little 3-person sub and cruise down to, well, in this case, about 1,500 feet. That's just the upper layer of the ocean, but you can get down to where it's dark all of the time. That's at about 1,000 feet. Some light does penetrate a bit below that. But when you think about it, the average depth of the ocean, Earth's living space, where most of life on Earth actually is, the average depth is 2.5 miles. That's about the depth that the Titanic rests in the ocean. The average depth. The maximum, 7 miles. That's where only 3 people have been in all of the history of humankind. Well, there may be more, but I mean 3 people who've been down and have come back. Told us about it, showed their pictures. But why is it taking us so long to, while we're advancing ourselves, going high in the sky, sending probes all the way to Mars and even beyond the edge of our solar system, that it's taking us as long as it is, now that we have the power, the technologies, the materials, and the important knowledge that we must explore the ocean, because the ocean keeps us alive. There are many designs coming out now. This is one of my favorites because my daughter and son-in-law have actually come up with this design. A little 3-person sub that can go to 1,000 meters. Maybe the next time I come back here, I can, tell sea stories about having explored in that little sub. Meanwhile, Russia has a number of deep diving subs going down to 6,000 meters, and China has built a 7,000 meter system and is working away on an 11,000 meter three-person sub to go to full ocean depth by 2017. It's like the space race underwater. So, Interspace. Things that are now facing us that were not an issue when I was a kid. We're just beginning to understand something about the nature of the changes that are taking place, including the most exciting of all is the surprise, like surprise. We did not know that there'd be a big storm coming to Houston and cancel my talk. I was supposed to be here a few weeks ago. We're surprised the ocean is acidifying. The ocean is doing what? Excess carbon dioxide, turning the ocean to be more acid than it has been in 55 million years. Whoa, what's going on here? We didn't know that. That was possible. But now we know. I think we have the great good news of understanding. Fossil fuels that did not power civilization until well into the 20th century at a level that could really change the world. And we are the beneficiaries of that. But what we now know, both from our travels high in the sky, our ability to fly around the world, to have automobiles to take us wherever we want to go on a short range across continents, the ability to have a communication system powered by fossil fuels, the ability to have clothes we wear, the food we eat, this amazing source of energy that has propelled us from where, when I was a kid, 2 billion people to now almost 8 billion people. And what we have not known until now is the downside. And that is powerful, knowing that while we respect the past and appreciate the values, and will continue to whatever extent we must, drawing on fossil fuels, but to realize that we also have to change our ways and put things in perspective. Never until the 20th century did the Earth look like this. And we'd like to be able to continue doing so without harming the ocean, without harming the planet in ways that may, in the end, harm us. Now we can see, we've got the evidence. We're up there in the sky, we're measuring with satellites, with human eyes, and with people on the ground, the changes in polar ice. Just in the last few decades, the ability to show the loss that is unprecedented, something I never thought would be an issue. I thought Santa Claus would always have a place in the North Pole, not knowing that changes could happen so swiftly with me as a witness, with you as a witness, with all of us living through this remarkable point in Earth's history, in human history, in polar bear history. Bad news for those guys with melting ice, polar bears, walruses, the little creatures that live in the sea. Bad news far, far away from polar ice. Coral reefs have really felt the change with warming seas, too warm for their own comfort. So I too have witnessed this starting at about 1980, with coral reefs on a precipitous decline, so that now about half of them are gone or are in a state of sharp decline because of coral bleaching, the loss of the little algae that live in the tissues of coral that don't like the water when it gets too hot for an extended period of time. And they skip out. Sometimes they come back, but sometimes they don't. And repeated bleaching means bad news for the corals. And it's not just the warming, and it isn't just the changes in chemistry, like acidification. It's also the fact that what we are taking out of the ocean, taking the fish, the lobsters, and other things that are part of these critical ocean systems. Oh yes, we're putting more than just CO2 into the ocean. I've been a witness to this too. I come from the pre-plasticozoic. I mean, I love plastics. I have Ziploc bags. I think my shoes are plastic. I have a cover on my computer that's plastic. It's not the plastic that's the problem. It's what we do with it when we're through with it. We ought to be able to recover plastic and use it again and again. Give it a second, third, and fifth, 100 times a life. They're too valuable to throw away, these goods that we've created. But we have this notion that that's what we should do. Just throw them in the trash can or throw them in the dump, throw them in the ocean. Things go away, right? No, they do not. I am here to tell you, they are in the ocean, swirling around, changing the nature of our life support system. Above and beyond even what rainforests contribute to the atmosphere and as carbon capturing creatures. But the ocean itself, the wild blue ocean, that's where most of the action is. That's where most of the carbon is captured, where most of the oxygen is generated. And what you're seeing here, or not seeing here because it's so tiny, these little tiny specks, this is an image of one of the most important fellow creatures on the planet. It's called Prochlorococcus. Better learn that word, Prochlorococcus, Prochlorococcus. You know, you ought to say it and sing it and write poems and whatever it is to celebrate this creature, because 1 in every 5 breaths you take comes from Prochlorococcus. And its existence was not known until 1986, about the same time that we stopped killing whales commercially. You know, it's so exciting to be around when these discoveries are being made and when these changes in knowledge, they can be reflected in policy and behavior once you know. So we should be protecting Prochlorococcus if only we knew how. It's abundant in the ocean all over the world. Tiny, really tiny. It takes a special kind of instrument to be able to even see them. But if you get a lot of them, like billions, in a jug, you can see it looks green. Photosynthesis is going on there. That means capturing carbon, releasing oxygen. That wonderful process that makes our lives possible. We look face to face and to realize that fish have faces, that everyone is a distinctive individual. They have special behaviors. The freckles on the nose of this parrotfish are unlike the freckles on the nose of any other parrotfish that ever has been, just like every human being is different, every cat, every dog. But fish, I didn't think about that until I spent, days and nights living underwater, meeting the same fish time after time, and realizing that I could identify individuals by their faces, by their behavior, by where they lived. Some little fish spend their entire life, or most of it anyway, in a single little crevice, in an empty shell of a barnacle, or in a special crevice in a rock in a certain place on the reef, and they may go out for a little tour, but they come back. They have homes. They sleep. Now we know. And here's the other big thing that is so important about being alive right now. Going back to the 80s, when for the first time nations began to extend their reach out into the ocean. The United States claims out 200 miles. Other nations with a coastline similarly have territory out 200 miles, jurisdiction. It's like there's another United States out there. It's blue. Most of this country, in fact, is underwater. 55% of the United States is from the shore out to the edge of our exclusive economic zone. And then there's the high seas, that big space in between that no nation really owns. Now some leases are being allowed now on the deep sea bed for mining purposes, and some nations are taking the just initiative and are fishing out in the high seas without any particular authority. They're just doing it. But this is the moment. You see nations such as China actually making islands out of shallow reefs. They're bringing part of the seafloor up and creating more land so they can claim more parts of the ocean. It's an interesting time. Just the whole business, legal regimes of who owns the ocean and how are we going to take care of it. 100 years ago, the national park system got up and running in this country. to celebrate the centennial next year. Some say the best idea America ever had, to proactively protect parts of the natural world that provide the underpinnings of what we need to survive. Watersheds, wildlife, generating oxygen, taking up carbon. But we forgot about the ocean, or we thought the ocean was going to take care of itself. Too big to fail. We can do whatever we want to the ocean. We have historically thought, but now we know. And so actions are beginning to be taken, starting in the 70s in Australia, in this country, with a marine sanctuary program to protect parts of the ocean. What a concept. Even though you can't own it the way you can own land, in a way we all have a vested interest. So why not get our government to say, let's put in the best interests of the country places that we will deliberately leave alone. Assets that we will put in the bank, that everybody benefits by being able to breathe. Everybody benefits because water is evaporated up in the sky and falls back on the land and sea as rain or snow. So the idea of protection for the ocean, right now it's beginning to catch on. Go back 10 years, the parts of the ocean that were protected amounted to like 0.1%. Now it's 1%. I mean, we've amped it up owing to actions taken by George W. Bush and more recently by President Obama, and around the world, in Australia, in Palau. The UK has just designated the waters around Pitcairn Island, and also in the Indian Ocean, Chagos Archipelago. They're looking at Ascension Island. Little tiny bit of land, but a lot of ocean surrounding it under the jurisdiction of countries.